this is Kyle Smith with Hagerty, and today I'm talking you through 12 essential chemicals to have in your garage before you tackle DIY projects. So in this video, we're talking automotive chemicals, but we're skipping over a few of the heavy hitters that you might be familiar with, and those are your basic automotive fluids. So we're not going to say oil, we're not saying your coolants, or possibly your windshield washer fluid. Those are all pretty obvious and unique to each vehicle. These are more unique to DIY projects and things you're doing with your hands to maintain your vehicle. So I'm going to run through the list and tell you about each of these and why you want to have it around. We're not talking specific brands here, but mainly just what the product is and what it will do for you. So let's get started down here on the end with basic chassis grease. And I love to have a tub of this hanging around the garage because honestly, as soon as I had one hanging around, it was something that I found myself reaching for 2 to 3 times a week. And I didn't even know I needed it until I had it. Something like this you can use all the time. I keep an acid brush or just a small paintbrush hanging around and usually inside of it, and it's an easy way to apply out of something like this compared to using a grease gun. Of course, if you have a grease gun, keep it stocked with the same grease, but a tub keeps you from having to use that grease gun all the time. The next one that we've got here is just your basic blue Threadlocker. And that Threadlocker is important. You want to make sure to use this when assembling items that you want to make sure stay assembled. It's just that simple. So your blue Threadlocker is the most common type of Threadlocker that you're going to come across, and it's also the weakest. But don't think that you need to go to a red or a green Threadlocker, because this blue holds tight for the vast majority of applications and is appropriate for those. And red and green only make things more difficult to remove. If you're having trouble taking something apart that has been assembled with Threadlocker, heat is your friend. But remember, if you assembled it with Threadlocker and it's stuck together, you can get it apart. If you didn't assemble it with Threadlocker and it's rusted solid, you're gonna have a bad time. So something like that is an easy thing and it makes sure things go together correctly. The third one that we're looking at here is a simple dielectric grease or a silicone grease. And the reason you want to use one of these is for electrical connections that you're putting together, especially like a GM weather pack connector or something that has a gasket to it. This makes those gaskets assemble properly and sit correctly without being pinched, so they actually remain weather tight. And it also makes things corrosion resistant. So if you assemble 2 fittings that push together, they don't corrode and you end up with a bad connection. Something like this is cheap insurance to make sure that all of your electrical pieces are going to continue working for years to come. So at the beginning, I said it was 12 chemicals that we were looking at, and if you are paying attention and counted everything out, you know it's 13. And this is where we split it down and have to talk about why we made it 13 and how it changed. You have a lubricant or a WD-40 type product, and then you also have a penetrating oil like a PB Blaster. And there's any number of versions of either of these, and you can pick whatever brand that you like, but the concept is the same between the two of them. I like to use WD-40 to keep things from sticking together or from corroding together, and also to displace water, because that is what the WD in WD-40 stands for, is water displacing. So something like this, you can get rid of water underneath, like say a distributor cap. However, your PB Blaster is going to work well to creep into the threads of something that is corroded to actually allow a fastener to break free. They should not be used interchangeably, and they each have their own place in your toolkit of chemicals that you have in your drawers. And between these two, you're probably going to have WD-40 hanging around. It's a great household product as well, but really, if there's one you're going to be friends with, if you're working on any old vehicles, it is a penetrating oil. So find the one you like, stock up on it, have it around. It's gonna make your life easier if you just have it to use. This next one here is a controversial topic, but it's something that I definitely think you should have hanging around, and that is starting fluid. And there's a couple reasons for it. And most of the time when I'm using starting fluid, it is not because I'm trying to start something that is being hard starting. It is actually for diagnostics. And that is if I'm looking for a vacuum leak or something on a carbureted car, especially my Corvair, I can spray starting fluid around the base of that and it pulls in and I can feel or hear the idle rise of the car because this is flammable. Not all automotive aerosol chemicals are flammable. However, your starting fluid, you're going to definitely be able to use it to do that. You can also use it for hard starting engines. I don't recommend necessarily relying on it, but it is something that you should keep around and use sparingly only when you need to. The next one we've arrived at is white lithium grease, and this is a real handy one to have around. It's similar to your WD-40 in that it is a lubricant and something that you're keeping around. However, this is a little bit more permanent, and it's for metal to metal surfaces. So think door latches, door hinges, or even steering column components. And this is plastic safe. So if you get it on like a turn signal switch or something like that, it's not going to be a great concern for you or a problem. It's also something that doesn't freeze. So if you live in a cold climate and you have a daily driver vehicle, something like this on your door latches or even inside of a lock is gonna make sure that works all winter long. If you're working on projects for very long, this is another one that you're going to be very familiar with, and that is carburetor cleaner. And the best thing about carburetor cleaner is it cuts through any junk that is left over in your carburetor. It also works great for removing oil from the exterior of some products. You just wanna make sure to contain it as it drips off of your project. But something like this can bring life back to a vehicle and make it run again. I go through a lot of cans of it because I rebuild a lot of carburetors. You're gonna find a brand that you like and that works for your situations and how you like to use it. When you do, stock up on it and keep it around because it makes life easier when you don't have to run out for something like this just because you're starting on your project. This next one we arrive at is one that not a lot of people keep around, but it's something that I really think makes sense, and that is a Prep-Sol type product or a Prep-Solve, like this aerosol version. What this is a basic wax and grease remover that prepares whatever surface you need to paint for that paint. Otherwise, you might end up with adhesion issues or, fish eyes, whatever's going on there. This is gonna get rid of those and make sure that you have a good, clean surface for that paint to adhere to. It's also good for cleaning things off if you're working with something that's very greasy and you need to get rid of all of it. This will cut through it and leave a good, clean, no residue surface. It's really handy to have around. I find myself using it more often than I'd care to admit, even when I'm not painting, because it is such a good cleaning product. The next one we've arrived at here is Brake Clean, and honestly, this can is empty because it's all we could find here in the shop, and that's just so common. It's a product that you need and nothing else will do. Some people try and substitute carburetor cleaner for brake clean and vice versa, and honestly, it's not the best way to go about things. This doesn't get rid of carburetor deposits nearly as well as carburetor cleaner does, and Carb Clean does not leave your brake surfaces as clean as Brake Clean does. Whatever it is, the formulations are different. Make sure to get the proper thing for the job that you're doing. Of course, there is a couple different kinds of Brake Clean, and this is a non-chlorinated style, and there is also chlorinated. The chlorinated tends to work better, however, it has environmental concerns, so it's not always available. So use what you can and make sure to use it sparingly and use only what you need. And what we've arrived at now is just your basic engine degreaser like this Speed Clean from Driven Racing. Any gunk products work in a similar manner. This is for removing heavy dirt and grime from engine blocks or engine compartments, under chassis stuff, rear axles especially. If you have a leak under the car and you're going underneath there to do some work, hose it down with some of this, wash it off, then go under and do your work. Don't try and deal with that grease and grime and remove it halfway through your project. Start with a clean surface, use one of these, it's gonna make your life easier. Everything we've talked about up until this point has been mainly for working on your car. And now we're talking about items to keep your car clean and safe while you're driving. And the first one for that is find a great glass cleaner and use it regularly. There's nothing worse than a windshield you can't see through. When it comes to glass cleaners, this is the one that we have tried, and we've tried a lot of glass cleaners here in the garage, but we find that a non-ammonia type glass cleaner works a little bit better and often streaks less and leaves less residue that we have to deal with when we're working on it. So find one that you like, try them out, they're usually fairly cheap, find one that works for you, and yet again, stock up on it and keep it around. And the last one here is a standard interior cleaner or a leather cleaner, depending on what type of interior you have. And that's going to make things more comfortable and make sure you keep all of these off of your interior products. But should any of them end up on your interior fabrics, use something like this to get them out and maintain that finish just the way that you need. Now here in the Hagerty garage, these are the 12 chemicals that we reach for most often, and it's designed to cover 99% of the needs in a home garage as well. Now, if you think there was something that should have been on this list, go ahead and leave it down as a comment below. It might help someone else out with their projects. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.